Hey guys, got a 30-minute unrated game up on the board against an opponent rated 1239, and we have the French with e4, e6, and I've replied with d4. Okay, what are we going to go for? Go for the exchange variation. Expecting e takes d5. Alright. Let's bring the knight out. So I actually started work today on my ultimate tactics course. Okay, so we've got a symmetrical board right now. I could play c4, try and get my bishop out. That would seem okay, sensible. Bishop coming out is a possibility. If takes, I'll recapture with the bishop and then I'm ready to castle. Ooh, he's playing totally symmetrical. Could play knight out now. Then I've got two attackers on there, two defenders. Want to wait until he captures that pawn and then recapture with the bishop. Let's bring my bishop out, pin the knight. There's one defender not on that pawn. So now if I capture, knight can't capture, but queen still could. So maybe knight c3 next. See what my opponent chooses to do. Okay, so he's broken the pin. Now if takes, knight takes, it's not ideal. Should bring my knight out. I think knight c3 looks alright. That's okay. Takes, I've got knight takes. Black can now castle. Not following theory here, I'm just going by principles, hopefully. Plenty of time on the board, on the clock. So that's adding a third defender to this pawn. So now if I were to take, bishop takes, there's still two defenders on there. Alright. However, this bishop is the defender of the knight, a defender of the knight, and also the defender of there. So if I capture with my bishop and bishop recaptures, there is actually a free pawn. I'll grab the knight. Bishop takes, I've got pawn takes there. And then maybe b4 to bolster. Pawn takes, that's really weakening for black. Opponent is from Italy. Okay, got pawn takes. Good. Right, I'm happy about that. Now I think that c takes d5 is okay. Also, it means you've got two attackers on here and only one defender. So I think I need to initiate the exchange there. Queen can't recapture, needs to be the bishop. Now I don't like black's pawn structure here. He's going to struggle to get his king safe. I've also maybe got bishop b5 check. Bishop recaptures, let's say I recapture here, queen takes, then bishop b5 check, and the only way to block is with the knight. Let's think this through. There's also a discovery actually. D takes c5, bishop takes c5, I can capture the bishop. Free piece. Don't think this works. If I go straight there, it's got bishop blocks. Doesn't really help. I think this looks good. Takes, and now this bishop is in little trouble. The one option is bishop takes knight. Then we may exchange queens, but then he can recapture with the bishop, and he hasn't lost castling rights. However, with this pawn structure, it's not good. I think bishop takes knight is the only move, really. And if I recapture with queen, he can grab the pawn. So as things stand, this bishop is actually hanging. So he really does need to capture there. Then I recapture the queen, and my queen's actually also looking at b7 and the rook behind it, which is okay. Yeah, so queen recaptures. Let's think it through. It's not rush, it's not react. Queen takes bishop. Bishop takes pawn. I think we're okay. Still have bishop b5 check. Now, big advantage is that black's got these double pawns there, which is a big problem for king safety. Ooh, okay. This has chosen not to recapture the pawn just yet. Now, if I move my queen onto the e-file, then that pins this bishop, and the bishop cannot recapture straight away. I've also got bishop b5 to pin the knight. So obviously the knight coming out here has prevented that capture there. Can't castle this way because the king would have to go through check. So I'm kind of inclined to, I want to get this bishop out, so I think bishop there makes sense. Pins the knight. Then let's say bishop takes, I've got bishop takes knight with check, pawn recaptures, queen recaptures, so I do win the pawn back there. I'm currently a pawn up. I want to castle my king, I want to centralise my rook on D or E. This is looking okay. Just don't really fancy black's prospects for castling right now. Knight can't move because it's pinned. So my extra pawn right now is this fella. So we could end up with two isolated pawns. Okay, so it's chosen to capture. Alright, so bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and I might be able to stop the king from moving and castling. Or I could castle now. And if I castle now, black castles that way, it's not great. But with an open board like this, do I want to trade off my only remaining bishop? It's hard to say. I've also got rook A to D1, to hit the queen, but this does win a pawn. Let's go for it. With check. I think pawn takes is pretty much forced now. I can still castle at the end of this. Pawn takes, queen takes with check. Queen could block, in which case we trade queens, centralise my rooks, and I'm looking okay. But I'm going to have a knight against the bishop on a fairly open board. If the queen moves, also the queen's the only defender of this pawn right now. I'm also now attacking this bishop. So what does black do? If it blocks with the queen, I get the bishop. Now I can capture the bishop with check. Happy with that. Queen there blocks the check, forces the exchange of queens, but I'm now going to be up a piece for the ending, which is very good. I think we're looking comfortable. This forces the exchange. Either queen blocks or the king has to move. If the king moves, I'm just going to castle, centralise my rooks, and we are in a very good situation. I've got one extra pawn, plus all of black's pawns isolated and doubled on the f-file. So this looks like a winning position and castle. Now to get my rooks into the middle. We've got 3 open files, which is lovely. Got knight here, rook here first, push the king away, knight there. Right, should be relatively comfortable endgame now. If I go here and king goes there, I've actually got fork on king and rook, which is winning. So that check is a possibility. If the king goes anywhere else, I grab that pawn. The only way really to stop that is to put a rook on d8. Either rook could go there. Okay, my opponent's disconnected. 3 minutes to save the loss. Don't disconnect and don't just bail. Okay, abandoned. There you go. Interesting little game. Let's just review quickly. So French, d4 is normal, d5 is normal, and we go for the exchange variation. Develop knight, c4, c5, copycat. Now we have a pin on the knight and breaking the pin. Knight out, adding a second defender to this pawn. Sorry, it's second attacker. Now 3 defenders. Now we swap off, and because of this issue, black decides to save the pawn, because if bishop takes, I've got pawn takes. However, that's an isolated pawn, kind of. But then, like we say, we did have b4. So black here decides to capture with the pawn, which is very weakening, particularly seeing as he's played the c pawn out there. So not ideal. So now we have a swap off of pawns in the middle. Now I grab this pawn, and instead of recapturing, black trades off one of his bishops, which is not ideal with an open board like this. Now knight out, pin the knight. Bishop now does grab the spare pawn, but puts the bishop in a fork position. So now after takes, pawn takes is forced, queen takes, and we have a fork on the checked king and the bishop. I don't know if there's any way to prevent that. The queen can't defend the bishop and block the check, so the king has to move. Now black is down a piece. We trade queens, castles, and that's the end of the game. Fairly straightforward, and again, as always, decided by tactics. So thank you to my opponent. Hope that's been useful for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.